Hi everybody, it's Randy with Direct Action Combat Performance.
Hey guys, and Sam from Adaptie State Performance.
So together today we're going to present a question that we'll see where it goes. It's a complex subject with mental health and mental resiliency, but what Sam and I will talk about today is the benefits not just for sport optimal performance for every day, but just everyday life too. Okay? Everybody is dealing with different things, and I personally don't believe that mental health and the state of mental resiliency should have a negative connotation. I don't believe that it does. I think there's ways that we can, inherently embrace stress for what it is and use it as a motivator and use it as a performance enhancer rather than a deterrent or something that's going to hold us back. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And as always, feel free to post your comments or add any questions that you'd like us to address.
Awesome. Yeah, so I was thinking that a subject that a lot of people express interest in hearing more about, and especially from somebody who they look up to as a role model or somebody that they respect or they know has some experience that they personally don't have, is often I currently feel like I have this set of mental skills and I'd like to have this set of mental skills. So how do I get from this point to this point? Can I develop new mental skills? Is it something that you have or you don't have? How do you learn new mental skills? How do you practice them? And essentially, what is the path to success to achieving that? So I get that question a lot.
Yep, and I agreed. I get this question a lot as well. And full disclosure, I'm not a doctor. I'm not I don't claim to be a psychologist in any way. Yes, I study sports psychology because I find it interesting. Yes, I study human behavior and organizational behavior because I do find it interesting. And there's components of what I learned, through studies, just reading a lot of material. What I'm able to do is then take past life experiences, real-time experiences, connect it with a theoretical component to add some tangible realism. So when people ask me the question, I can say stuff like, based on my experience, this is what I went through, these were the circumstances that led to it, and this is how I dealt with it. So, just full disclaimer, there are some things when it comes to mental health that I think it's beneficial if people will talk to a professional, for sure. That's why professionals are in that field. And sometimes, athletes or people will openly have these conversations with me because they feel comfortable with it. And that's fine. I admire that and I respect that. And sometimes there's components of friendships of clients or people that I interact with who you can tell they're dealing with some serious stuff. And they like the fact that they can go to a professional because that professional doesn't know them. So they feel a little bit more open to express some things that they're dealing with. So what I'm trying to say is there's avenues for everybody. Some people like to talk to, folks like Sam and I, and some people prefer to go down the professional realm. There is something for everybody. And, what Sam and I will talk about today are just some areas of, mental strength and overall resiliency or robustness that has helped, us. And if it helps somebody else, then this is a good thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And what you just said there about there's something for everybody is I personally and know many people who have explored different avenues of who to talk to, and it took multiple trial and error attempts before they found the right one. But often it's a combination of things too. So maybe somebody's listening today who has only ever had a professional psychologist or sports psychologist or whatever it might be, and they've never just heard somebody like you who has some serious life experience that has required some serious mental fortitude and resilience, and that may speak to them completely differently than they got from their sessions with the person that they used to speak to. So I think even if it's little tips or little pieces of advice or just a different perspective, that it can be very beneficial for people to hear that.
So I think one area that has been asked of me in the past was about, for me, was managing my professional career with my mixed martial arts career, which is a profession on its own, but managing those two at the same time. And I did allude to it on one of the talks that we had in the past about the last component, the last few, we'll say year and a half, 2 years of my MMA career, how things didn't quite go according to plan. And I can attribute that to some mental limitations, and that's exactly what it was. And I'm okay with talking about it now because, again, my experiences may resonate with somebody that could help them. So I talked about it in one past podcast or discussion that we had with regard to the last few fights were when I finished fighting before I retired. I was fighting for all the wrong reasons. And it wasn't until things then were finished for me in terms of the professional mixed martial arts career that I realized that didn't go the way I was hoping. Certainly could have been a lot better. And knowing now what I didn't know then, when I say I was fighting for all the wrong reasons, my state of mental readiness or robustness wasn't where it needed to be when I was climbing into the ring. So when I climbed into the cage, into the ring to fight, I was fighting not to lose rather than fighting to win. So in the early years of my career, there was a point where I went on a 5-fight win streak, and mentally, physically, I was in it. I was in the moment, and I was fighting for all the right reasons. And my motivations were, I wanted to fight in the UFC. There's no secret in that. But I also really wanted to be the first Special Forces soldier in Canada to fight and perform in the job. So those were my motivations. The last component of my career, the reason I say I lost those fights before I even stepped into the cage is because, like I just said, I was fighting not to lose, and rather than fighting to win. So to me, what that showed and what that was a demonstration of was a lack of mental commitment. So if I could give anyone any advice that would be in that position, I would say, when you're fighting, it's a sport, and we fight because we want to fight, not because we have to fight. So at any point, you don't have to do any of those things. We do it and we choose to do it. So when we're training and preparing, it's because it's competition, it's pure, it's in a safe, controlled environment. There's a referee, there's two athletes who agree to, beat the snot out of each other, but they're doing it with a level of respect. They know. So when I look across the cage, for example, whatever's going through his head, I don't know, but I'm willing to bet he's having very similar feelings as myself. Like, hey man, I want to do my best. I want to come out with a victory. I don't want to get seriously hurt. I don't want to embarrass myself. These are all factors that will go through an athlete's head for sure. I think what happened for me was I knew that I was in the twilight years, when I was getting close to retirement. I knew that I was going to retire at some point, and I really wanted to fight to, beef my numbers. Like I wanted to go out with a better record. So I retired with an 8-7 record. In the last 3 fights I lost. Didn't go according to plan. But like I said, if I could do it again differently, I would make sure that I'm getting in the cage and it's to perform and it's to show and showcase what I'm capable of. And it's to win, right? Ultimately it's to win. Like I love competing. People that know me well know I'm a pretty competitive guy, and I don't like to lose anything, no matter how small or big the competition is. So what I was doing was, I'm like, okay, if I just do this and I just do that, well, I should come out on top. Instead of, hey, get after it. Do everything that you're capable of doing. Do the things that you're really good at, knowing that this might be the last fight. So fight as if there might not be a tomorrow, where I wasn't really thinking it from that perspective. I was thinking like, all right, if I get 1 or 2 more wins, whatever I do after I'm retired, it's going to be a little bit better when you have a higher winning record. That was part of the reason, right? So yeah, there was a lot of that was going through my head quite often, right? So it was ultimately, fighting not to lose, rather than fighting to actually win.
I think that is a lesson and a skill all in one. The fact that you were fighting not to win, but not to lose. And some people would look at that and say, well, what's the difference between winning and not losing? Isn't it the same thing? But I think that shows your maturity in that thought process and your experience, because there is a difference, which you just explained. Whereas somebody who hasn't had that experience yet or hasn't come to that realization yet would not think there was a difference between those two things at all.
Yeah.
So when you're saying that there's a difference between those two things, if you were to kind of sum it up in 2 sentences, what's the difference between fighting to win and fighting not to lose?
Risk assessment. Fighting to win, you're willing to take more risk. You're willing to do whatever it takes, and you're willing to, expose yourself a little bit more and put yourself out there. Where fighting not to lose is more cautious. Like I was fighting way more cautious, where I legitimately didn't want to get hurt, because not only was I getting long in the tooth with fighting, but I was also getting long in the tooth with the career. And what I noticed was with my career at the unit, when I was at the unit, is I would show up to work sometimes banged up from either training or, you know, if it was a fight, for example, I would often take leave from work so it wouldn't interfere with work, but I would still come back to work and sometimes not fully recovered. So there was a negative effect on my daily performance at work, which was unfair to the unit, and it was unfair to the people who I had the opportunity to help and mentor when I was within the unit. So I was becoming more concerned about not being the best version of myself, both at work and in the ring, that I started to fight way more cautiously. So I think, you know, I'm convinced, to answer your question, that's the difference. When you're willing to win and you're willing to do whatever it takes, you're willing to go that extra mile. You're willing to take that extra risk. You're willing to do things that, you know, maybe is a little bit outside your character.
And in that same realm, I think that would apply not just to fighting, but to several different aspects of life. So maybe, for example, somebody, if we're keeping in theme with what you were just mentioning, maybe somebody who's applying to get into the unit, they may be applying without a plan B.
Yes.
They only have a plan A. So would you say that that person who doesn't have a plan B is in the camp of they're applying to succeed, or they're applying to not have to have a plan B?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's always a good idea to have a plan B and a plan C, no matter what the context is, no matter what it is you're trying to achieve. And sometimes that neglect to have a plan B can be the motivating factor for that individual, where they're literally putting themselves on the line and they're saying, I'm making this my only thing. Like I'll put in everything else, I'm sacrificing everything else, and I'm allowing this plan A to be my only plan. Puts a lot of pressure on them. And that can be motivating for some people, but that can also be, I think, very dangerous for a lot of reasons. And it's really good to have that much devotion and really put that much sacrifice, heart, soul, sweat into achieving that ultimate goal. But it's a wise idea, in my belief, to have a plan B for sure, because things happen the way they happen, and sometimes it doesn't go according to plan, and that's okay. That doesn't make you less of a person. That doesn't make you that doesn't certainly highlight or bring to the surface that you're not capable of, just maybe not right now, right? So I think it's really good to have a plan B at all costs and in all stages of life, no matter what.
Mm-hmm. And so, like you just said, maybe it's just not the right time. Like
Yeah.
maybe you just came to that point of your career early.
Yeah.
So do you think that certain mental skills, whether it's something about mental strength, like you mentioned earlier, or maybe it's problem solving skills, because I think when we're talking about mental skills, we don't just mean resilience or being able to like push through difficult situations, but also problem solving skills, leadership skills, critical thinking skills, the ability to have difficult conversations, confrontations,
Yes.
things like that. I think those would all fall under the umbrella of
Yeah.
mental skills. Do you think that those are only accumulated through time and experience? Is it something that you are kind of born with? Like some people just have like neurons that fire differently that make them stronger mentally, if that's the right term for it or not. Is it experience? Is it learned? Is it a combination? Can you train those skills? Is it something that you just can't really develop without difficult experiences? So I know I asked a lot of questions there, but
Yeah, and it's good. Like I do believe that some of these skills are just inherent in your DNA. You have them. Some people are born with them and they're very fortunate. And in some cases, some of these skills can be developed over time for sure. So it's kind of like a toolbox, right? So it's very similar. I use a carpenter analogy. So if you're a carpenter and you're really good with a hammer, we're gonna see every problem set as a nail, and we're gonna try to hammer the shit out of it, right? Whereas, you know, time and experiences guide us through hardships, difficulties. We gain new tools. We are forced to utilize a different tool for a different problem set, knowing that the hammer is not always going to be the tool of choice given the problem set. So I do believe some things can be learned, some things we just have them. Some people have them. Critical thinking, I think, is one that can definitely be learned, but at the same time, I do believe too, the ability to take a deep breath when you're in a situation that is uncomfortable, and then systematically, logically think your way through the problem. the only way to do that is to put yourself in those positions. If you are never in a position that makes you uncomfortable, then how would we ever really, learn those new skills or apply that new tool? So yes, to answer your question, I do think some of it is learned and some of it is we just inherently have it.
And do you think that, so for example, if somebody has poor problem solving skills situationally, so not pen and paper, a school subject, not that kind, but the kind where they're in a complicated situation, something very dynamic and complex, like a very fluid environment. If they've never been in a situation like that to develop those types of skills, then how can they develop those types of skills if they don't have access to similar?
That's a great question. I had a very similar conversation with a friend of mine not too long ago, and the context was the individual's working in a cubicle setting, right? So there's multiple people in an office setting, and communication sometimes is delivered through email. And there was a situation that was presented to me, and I'm just sharing the advice that I gave this individual. So that person said to me, I got this email from my boss. He's literally 3 cubicles over. The email, once it was read, it triggered a stimulus inside where they felt offended and they felt like they were being attacked. And the advice that I gave was, how did you react to it? Well, I thought about it for, quite some time, and then I responded. I said, okay, you responded with an email. The individual is literally 20 feet away. Here's what I recommended. Take a deep breath. Think about what it is that triggers that feeling, why that feeling is coming to the surface. You don't necessarily have to ignore it, but you're now going to channel it. So take a breath. Separate the facts from the perception. So what are the facts of the situation, and what are you perceiving to be the thing that is attacking you? And if you can separate the facts from the perception, that's going to give you something tangible. So when you present your rebuttal or your challenge to the individual, then you can have a discussion rather than, well, that's not true and this is how I feel. It's very, very different. So what I suggested to the person was take a deep breath and then literally walk down the hallway and say, hey boss, Johnny, Susie, whoever, like, can we have a quick conversation about this? This is how I'm understanding it, and depending on the archetype, like, are they a visual learner? Are they analytical? Are they a kinesthetic learner? Knowing a little bit about yourself will help or not just yourself, sorry, but the person that you're dealing with, so you can articulate your thought process in a way that's going to connect with them. So for an example, that person, maybe they are a very analytical type learner, where they want all of the information before they make a decision. Well, that would be ideal. Sometimes we don't have that much time to make a decision, so you need to make a decision based on the information that you have that are facts rather than the perception. So where I'm going with this is what I recommended was, if you understand that person and how they connect or what triggers them, try to use words that are going to connect with them. So if they're an analytical learner, for example, or individual, well, be prepared with your rebuttal or with your challenge in an analytical way. So that's going to connect with them. But if they are, say, a visual learner, maybe it's a drawing. Say, all right, boss, this is how I see it going. What do you think? Or how do you see this going differently? Get some feedback and ask questions that are, open-ended questions rather than, like more open questions where it's going to stimulate a conversation. That way you guys can come to an agreement that, maybe it meets in the middle. But so that was the recommendation that I gave, is understand a little bit about yourself, but also try to understand. And if you don't, seek to understand. Ask the questions so you can relate and you can build rapport with that individual, so you guys can communicate and have a conversation rather than, well, this is how I feel. Well, this is how I feel. Then it becomes an argument and nobody wins, and nobody really gets any further ahead. So that was the recommendation. So is that a mental skill? Is that a people skill? Is that a personality skill? It's a little bit of both, but having the courage to say, all right, this is going to be an awkward conversation. Well, that's okay. That's okay. At the end of the day, is there a desired result? Is there a solution to the problem at the end? Well, then that's a success for everybody, right? But if we read that email, we stew on it, and, it ruins our day or even a part of our day for even an hour, that's too much. Because then an hour, if that's what we're thinking about, what we're not thinking about is all of the other things that need our attention. We're just focused on that one thing. So deal with it head on. if we say something that we truly believe in, well, believe in it and speak to it with conviction. If we go into it, half-heartedly, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, similar to the MMA example that I gave earlier, when we go in a little bit too daintily with a little bit too much caution, we're not being authentic to ourselves and we're not being authentic to the situation. So that I think takes practice, but some people inherently have it. It's like, I don't agree with that. Hey, can I bend your ear for a second? I disagree for the following reasons. Here's the solution that I've created, or this is what I think. What do you think? How do you see it going differently?
Right. Yeah. And like, I personally would never have thought, okay, when I'm talking to somebody, maybe they're this type of learner, I should approach it from that perspective. So I think that's a great example, real time, where you have experience with situations like that, where I've never thought to practice speaking to somebody like that before. Yeah. I guarantee there's a lot of people like that. Is that something that you learned from someone to approach people from the perspective that they best receive? Or is that something that you just picked up, had success with, and now implement?
A little bit of both. Sometimes, I'll read certain things, different documentaries, different books and stuff that I'll read through. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, man, that's really valuable information. Then I take it a little step further. I'm like, all right, where has there been an example where whatever I'm reading, for example, I want to try to apply it to a real life situation, either past or potential future. So, okay, I understand the theory. Now, how do I conceptualize putting it into practice? And my deduction is a lot of interactions with humans are misunderstood because we don't fully understand their perspective. It's all about what we are thinking or what we want to achieve. So when it comes to a team environment, for example, we get a problem set. The team is involved. All the team has to be involved because it's a team, function. But if we don't ask what the other team members think, even deeper, if we don't know how the other team members think, well, then maybe we start with that. And maybe we start with just understanding their personality just a little bit more. So when we're trying to come up with a logical problem or a solution to the problem, then we can understand a little bit better where the communication fall off happens. Oftentimes, based on my experience in the military or interactions with my coaches or other teammates, what I've noticed is when things fall off the rails, oftentimes the key contributing factor is communication. So if we learn to become a better communicator, a good listener, as much as a good deliverer of questioning, chances are we're gonna shave a lot of the fat and we're gonna get to the meat a lot faster.
Right. I think that right now we're at a time in our life, like our lifetime, a time in society, a time in history where we communicate almost exclusively not face to face.
Yeah.
And that's problematic because you don't have to be thinking on your feet. You don't have to gauge people's emotions, reactions.
Body language.
You don't see how they're reacting directly. So I feel like that's a skill that is severely lacking in most people because we lack those person-to-person, face-to-face interactions. But you made a good point a moment ago about being able to understand a different person's perspective. We do live in our bubble, like our own world. We see everything from our perspective. So of course we're very self-centered. It's just natural. But to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and kind of think of how they're viewing your perspective as well is also something that's heavily impacted by the fact that we don't have as many face-to-face conversations.
Right.
So maybe also just a simple or not so simple skill would be practicing having face-to-face conversations with others because we tend to be so technologically driven in our communication at this point. I think that people aren't able to have a open disagreeing, like mutually disagreeing dialogue about a lot of things because our instinct due to technology's advancement is to immediately disagree and send, but not have a back and forth. So I think that that's probably something that a lot of people struggle with, is being able to have a disagreement calmly and mutually have an open dialogue about what's disagreed upon.
There's a lot to be said about social intelligence. So what does social intelligence mean to me might be different than 10 other people. And I think the development of social intelligence is understanding social cues, reading body language, noticing what happens with somebody's eyes or with their shoulders when they are uncomfortable. And why is it that they're uncomfortable? Is it something that I said? Is it my posture? There's a reason for that. So if that means we soften our posture or we use a different line of wording that is going to connect deeper with that individual, then to me that's a positive step forward. But that takes some mental resiliency, some mental toughness to even recognize and acknowledge that, and then be able to shift and change the angle a little bit, right? So social intelligence, emotional intelligence, I mean, there's a lot of documentary, a lot of study out there that talk about the benefits to it and how to inherently bring what you have inside out to use it as a potential motivator. But then there's a lot of information out there too that I think you can learn. If you understand a little bit more about yourself and a little bit more about the person that you're talking with, that dialogue becomes a little bit more mutual, and you don't necessarily feel like you have to win the conversation.
That's a big thing, is the winning. Yeah, I think people really want to win most of their interactions, but maybe it'd be healthier if we went into interactions just looking to have positive interactions for both people, right, as opposed to just one of us walking away the winner and one of us walking away the loser.
And you know what, like you talked about the social interactions with the keyboard, right? So I call it the keyboard warrior. They're very strong with their opinions or their words because there's no accountability, right? Where they can literally hide behind their monitor, say what they need to say, hit send, but that might take some time before there's any type of reflection or reaction. Where if we were to take that out of the equation and we think to ourselves, okay, if I verbally was going to share this same message, but it was in person, would I speak the same way? Would I use the same words, right? And I think a lot of that would be driven by the personality to which you're speaking to, right? So if, for an example, I'm dealing with somebody who I know is just maybe a little bit lower on a personal confidence level, maybe they have a little bit of insecurities, well then maybe I'm going to soften that whole conversation by pumping their tires a little bit, like make them feel good about themselves, like, and being genuine, like know the person well enough to know, like if I give them a compliment, then I know them well enough that it's not a bullshit, right? It's legit. And if I don't, then it's up to me to ask the questions, right? So tell me about your family. Oh, tell me about your kids. If it's something that makes them light up and they feel good about, great. But if it's the opposite, tell me about your family. I didn't know that they're in the middle of a messy breakup. Well, that might backfire. That might not be the best course of action, right? But what it will do, no matter what, is, especially when you're genuine, is ask the question and listen. Like listen, ask the question and give them time to speak, give them time to put their thoughts together without waiting for your response, right? Or waiting for your opportunity to talk again. So I think that is a great way to build rapport, but also just to have great conversations where at the end of the day, it's, does that person benefit? Do I benefit? That's maybe less important than, are we getting forward? Are we moving forward with whatever that problem set is? Are we coming up with a tangible, reliable solution to help make things better?
Right. Listening was a huge word there. I think that's another big skill that is being neglected because we don't listen to other people very often. We read other people very often, and then you can't sense any nuance. You can't sense the emotion. You can't sense how they feel about what they're saying. You're just reading it and interpreting it how you see it, but it may be completely different than how they see it. I kind of wanted to change course just a little bit, because something that I wanted to bring up way from the beginning of our conversation was when we were talking about mental strength. I think that we're going through almost a pandemic of people who are soft.
Yes.
And I wanted to bring this up because this is a question that I've gotten from people. They're like, I feel like I'm not mentally, strong. Like I kind of feel soft. Like I've had people actually say that to me, and they're like, I don't know how to become harder, like how to become stronger, how to be somebody who doesn't fold in tough situations, or somebody who's able to have difficult conversations, or somebody who's able to stick up for themselves, or verbalize how they feel without the fear of ridicule or disagreement or things along those lines. And I think that ties into what we were just talking about, which was not having face-to-face interactions. Like bullying when we were younger, and I know obviously I'm younger than you, but I feel like up until the technology being a part of your everyday life where you can't escape it. Bullying was only in person, for example, but now bullying is never ending because you may get bullied in person, but then you go home and you're still being bullied, right?
Yeah.
Especially we're talking about like school age kids.
Yeah.
So how do people in this circumstance where there's so many things working against them develop that hardness, that strength that maybe they haven't had the opportunity to learn or be exposed to just because situationally they're at a disadvantage?
Right. It's a good question. Part of it is not allowing yourself to be the victim. Like, just don't be victimized. Like, and people are like, well, that's easier said than done. No, it's not. If you feel like something is being put on you that is not accurate to what it is that you're doing, then don't fall victim to it. Like, just stand up and be like, no, that's not me. I don't do that. You may perceive that I'm like that, but I'm actually not like that. That's being in tune with yourself, knowing what our tendencies are. But the other thing too is like overall strength is sometimes these bullies, they need to be confronted. And my wife, she knows me well, and she knows what I'm trying to do with this chapter of my life that I'm in, and I embrace violence. I embrace it. I'm not. My wife oftentimes she's like, "Be careful, you don't want to promote violence." I said, "I'm not promoting violence. It's a very big difference." I embrace it in terms of sometimes, what bullies need? They need a punch in the mouth. They need knock on the door and be like, "Hey, what you're doing is unacceptable, and here are the consequences to what you're doing and what you're saying." Wham! There's two black eyes, and when you look in the mirror and you're looking at yourself and you look like a raccoon, realize that the reason that you look like a raccoon is because you offended the wrong person, or you said or did something that is unacceptable. It's fundamentally wrong from a moral, ethical perspective. You just don't do that. You don't treat another human being that way, and because you did, this is what you get. And
there have to be consequences.
There's consequences. There's got to be consequences. There's fractional consequences where, in some cases, just like when we were kids, shooting hoops at the basketball court, somebody did or said something, you'd throw down, and at the end of it, the guy would realize, I was a dick there. I definitely deserve that. And then your buddies, you brush each other off, be like, all right, man, quit being a dick. Let's get on with it, right? But that has gone so far away. We've swung, the pendulum has swung so far on the other side where now, if people are having a bad day, I've heard this, and the fact that somebody would even say, oh, my anxiety is acting up. Like, and listen, anxiety, depression, mental health, it's a very complex subject, and I'm not trying to knock it down. People are dealing with what they're dealing with. But for you to verbalize, oh, my anxiety is acting up, you've already allowed yourself to be the victim. Instead of saying, okay, I'm having a bad day or a bad part of the day. We never have a bad day. Like, there's components of the day that might be shitty, but it's never a terrible day unless you allow it to be. Unless you say, okay, I'm the victim, poor me, my anxiety is acting up. Well, I'm just gonna call the boss and I'm not going in today because I'm having a bad day. Okay, so you're gonna take the day off, which means now somebody else at work has gotta pick up the slack because you're not there, right? So now somebody else has gotta double down on their workload. Now you're putting more pressure on that individual. All of the knock-on effects to everybody else, but it's okay because you're at home watching Netflix, eating shit food, making the problem worse, perpetuating a problem that's not even there because in your head, you're having a bout of anxiety, right? So those people are like, hey man, toughen up, suck it up. You're having a bad part of your day. We all have bad days. We all have bad parts of the day. If you allow that to control you, to me, that's mental weakness. And we can overcome that. You can learn skills to apply, to embrace it. You're having a bad day? Big deep breath. All right. How can I fix this? How can, if a ship is moving off course, do you think the captain says, yep, we're off course. Well, we'll just see what happens. I'm going to take the day off. I'm going to go down a deck or two. I'm just going to see what happens. No, they make a correction and they do something about it. And part of the reason that I named direct action is to take action. Do something about it. Nobody else is going to fix your problem because everybody else is dealing with something else, right? Everybody is dealing with something. So by allowing whatever you're dealing with to be somebody else's problem, that is a problem. That is mental weakness. We can overcome that. We can become stronger. We can be the strength. We can be the strength, and we can show people like, hey man, I just had to put my dog down. I smashed up my car. Me and my wife are having a rough time. my little girl hates my guts. Poor me, poor me, poor me, poor me. Well, what are you doing about it? What are you doing to get out of that funk? What are you doing to make things better? Are you choosing what you put in your body as a nutritional outlet that's going to help your mental cognitive state? Are you doing something physical? Maybe go for a run, shake out the cobwebs. Are you taking the dog for a walk? Like, there are things that you can do. Are you having that hard conversation with the person that is making you feel that way? Do you have the courage to take a deep breath and be like, man, I really don't know how this conversation is going to go, but I know it's going to be better for everybody in the long run. So let's just have it. Let's get it out on the table. Let's get it off the chest, and let's have that conversation so we can move on. That way it doesn't become a perpetual problem that is, in some cases, self-internalized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you made the ship analogy, it's kind of like you're essentially were giving an analogy for, are you solution focused or are you problem focused? And when you were saying poor me, poor me, poor me, okay, what are you gonna do about it? That's poor me, poor me, poor me is problem focused, and what am I gonna do about it is solution focused. And you're right, a lot of the issues that people have right now is being victimized and self-victimizing.
Yes.
Like, I am at a disadvantage, like I am having a bad day, I am having all these problems, bad things are happening to me.
Yeah.
But you're right, you may not be in control of what is happening to you. Maybe there are some things that are totally out of your control. Like, maybe you got in a car accident that was completely not your fault. Maybe you got involved with somebody who did something that you had no control over, but you can control how you respond always to those situations. So I think when people can understand that control is not solely theirs or solely others, it's a combination of both, and that you can only really control what you have control of,
right,
and those are your outcomes that you're in control of, then I think that gives people a lot of mental freedom.
Yes.
Because it shows them that they do have the ability to make a change in their life. And yeah, some people are going through terrible, terrible things.
Yeah.
Like, I have a very close friend who was diagnosed with cancer, and she had no idea what was going to happen, but not a single person that knows that woman was like, oh, she's so sad.
Mm-hmm.
She was so happy through the whole process, and she's fully recovered and she's doing amazing, and everybody just commends her for how strong mentally she was during the whole process. And I swear, I don't know if there's science behind this, but I bet if you're positive about something like that it improves your outcome.
100%.
You know, I'm sure there's probably some science there. I don't know about it, but it definitely helps.
Yeah.
If you sit at home when you're ill, maybe you've gotten sick from, maybe you got the flu, or maybe you have like strep or something, and you sit at home and you're, oh, I feel like crap, whatever, you're just perpetuating it. And I think it literally makes your immune system react worse.
Yes.
Like, I don't think it's just it's not just in a mental realm is that an outcome. In a physical realm, I bet you that's an outcome as well. Like, you can control what happens to you physiologically as well.
Yes,
right?
100%. Yeah.
So I went, like we talked about in the last video, at the end of last year, I went through significant life changes all at once, and everybody was like, wow, you must be so strong to be able to go through all of this. Like, wow, you're so strong, like, you're so resilient. Like, I would never be able to go through all of that and still be coming out the other side.
Yeah.
But I think everybody is capable of that. It's how you approach it. It's how you tell yourself you're going to deal with it.
Yes.
And you're in control of the outcome at all times. There's always something you can do.
The dialogue that we have inside of our head, we can control. So there's a lot of science to support positive self-talk, and not being
like narcissistic about it.
Yeah. But being legit. So there's a lot of studies that suggest that we don't control the thoughts that enter our head, but we do 100% control how we respond to those thoughts. So we can control the way that we feel, the way that we're thinking, and the way that we're, learned behaviors are being executed on a daily basis. But we have to be self-aware first to recognize, okay, I'm having this shitty thought. We can dwell on that, like we talked about earlier, or we can then create that pattern interrupt that says, all right, this is happening. Why? Is almost a moot point why it's happening, but the fact that we're going to correct it and get this ship back on the right course, we can control that 100%. And the power of self-talk, is being like realistic and legitimate about what it is that you're saying to yourself, right? Like, I share this in the past with a few people that I've chatted with. Like, I like shooting hoops, right? So I don't do it a lot, but when I do, I just like shooting hoops by myself. Just, man, I just enjoy it. And sometimes I'll look up at the basketball or the basketball net, and I'm like, man, I'd love to be able to dunk a basketball, man. It'd be so cool when you watch those guys in the NBA do it. I'm like, man, that'd be fun. I know that's not in the cards, man. Like, I'm 5'6", 145 pounds. I am not dunking a basketball. Physiologically, it's impossible, but that's okay. I'm not going to dwell on the fact that I can't do it. I'm going to enjoy what I can do, right? I enjoy shooting hoops. Yeah, it's just not in the cards. So why would I positively tell myself, you just keep jumping, man. One day you're going to jump, and you're going to jump high enough. Physiologically, I'm not ever going to be able to jump 2.5 feet or whatever the distance is, right? So I wouldn't give myself that positive self-talk, because that's a myth. It's inaccurate. It's not real.
Right.
But we talk to ourselves with what's real. Man, I'm very intelligent. I like to think critically. I'm good with people. I interact well. These are all facts. So use that as the thing that you put into motion, so we can then, right or wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think, like, actually, a nice segue is I had a great conversation with a buddy of mine who's still serving, and him and I went through everything together and multiple operations overseas. And there are guys right now who are feeling the residual effects of things that they've done, things that they've seen in those years of combat during Afghanistan. But it's only coming to the surface now. Years later, a decade later, it's coming to the surface now. Why that is, I'm not sure. There's professionals out there who could definitely bridge the gap on why that happens. But the reality is they're dealing with something right now. And I truly believe post-traumatic stress disorder / injury, as it's referred to, in some cases now, the injury can be fixed if the individual will allow it to be fixed, right? So yes, the individual may be dealing with some PTSD, PTSI issues, but know that they will overcome it. They will become stronger because of it. And they're going to build a level of residue, robustness that they can then push forward, but only if they want to. If they allow themselves to continuously be the victim, then they're going to be in a rut for a long time. So you have to want it in order for it to come to fruition.
I remember learning about post-traumatic growth is actually a thing too, and I think a lot of people don't realize that that's actually real. But it is a term in psychology, and I learned it specifically in relation to sports psychology. But some people can go through, maybe person A and person B go through the exact same situation that is traumatic, whatever it might be, and person A comes out with a post-traumatic stress disorder or injury, and the other person comes out post-traumatic growth. So everybody will respond differently. It's hard to say why they respond differently, but I think you're absolutely right that if you truly want an outcome, and you are willing to be open to, maybe accessing the certain resources or whatever it might be, that you have the opportunity for both, right? You have the equal opportunity, whether you're person A or person B. Maybe you won't have equal outcome, but hopefully you have equal opportunity.
And I think if we put the odds in our favor, where, at the beginning of the discussion today, I was talking about the losses in the last few fights in my MMA career. If I had to put the focus on the victory and the focus on, leaving with my hand raised, leaving in a good position, well, my focus would have been on the right thing, right? So what we focus on and the intensity of what we focus on is equally important as the words and the conversation that we have with ourselves, right? So, you focus on the thing that you wish to achieve rather than the thing or multiple things that could happen. Yeah, there's lots of things that could happen, but what is it that we want to happen? What is it the thing that we want to see? Well, I want to see growth. I want to see improvement. Well, if you focus on that and you put some factors in place that will systematically allow that to happen, well, guess what? Higher probable chance that that's going to happen. The outcome was going to be a little bit more in favor.
Mm-hmm. And something that I just thought of in relation to what we were talking about before that always resonated with me after I heard it for the first time, and maybe will resonate with somebody else, is the worst thing that has ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. So everybody starts different situations from different starting points, right? Like if you've been in Afghanistan, for example, you've seen some stuff, like you've seen it.
Yeah.
Somebody who's never been there has never seen that. So you have a different starting viewpoint than that other person does. So that heavily impacts how you deal with situations as well, and how you go into a situation from a almost like preparedness standpoint. So like, even for you, and the reason I brought this up is like you wanted to end your career your MMA career with, you know, a high win to loss ratio. So here you sit today and you're like, I wanted to finish with an 11-4 instead of an 8-7, right?
Exactly.
So it didn't happen like that, but you're still sitting here and you're still proud of what you accomplished, because that's probably not the worst thing that's ever happened to you, you know? And you can cope with that differently, because I'm sure that it upset you and it was tough, right? And it probably still nags at you.
Yeah, a little bit.
But it's still not the worst thing that's ever happened to you, right? So relative, it's
relative and it's contextual, right? You're absolutely right. Like, say for example, somebody that's got a 10-0 record, well, what he or she had to deal with is going to be very different than somebody that's got a 5-5 record, right? Because that person with a 10-0 record, you know, they had a perfect record. And I do want to bring this analogy of perfect and best. I want to bring that up in a second. But where I'm going with this is context and situations will be different based on the individual, like you talked about. And the start point for that growth is going to be different for everybody. So an example that I'll give you is one particular operation that I remember in Afghanistan is there was two different compounds of interest that needed our attention. And the way that we broke it down, it was about 400 meters in separation. So the way it broke down is half the team smacked one target while half the team smacked the other target. And as this is unfolding, this target, the guys that are on this target, for example, they come into contact. So they're dealing with some ugly side of what combat can present itself. So while they're dealing with that, the other team, the team that I was with, there was nothing going on. It just happened. It's just by chance and opportunity. That's just the way it happened. And any given night, that literally could have been different, right? But the way it happened on this particular evening, you know, one team is dealing with some ugly shit. The other team, it just happened to be that there was nothing really for them to deal with. Now, what the guys experienced in compound A, we'll say, versus what the guys experienced in compound B, very, very different, which means there's going to be different levels of residue that gets left behind. And residue sometimes doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't have a negative connotation. But the reality is, what these guys are now, what they have had to deal with is going to help them with future situations that may be similar or vastly, vastly different. But now they have that. They have that, and nobody will ever take that away from them, right? So their level of whatever it is that they're dealing with is going to be very different than, you know, somebody of very, very similar layouts, very, very similar situations, but the outcomes vastly, vastly different, right? So that's going to challenge things differently for everybody. And you talked about perfect, like perfect or best. I don't personally like the terms like subject matter expert is what we would sometimes use for certain positions at the unit. I don't like expert, I don't like perfect, and I don't like best, because those are all relative terms, in my opinion. The best for you might be very, very different for the best for me. So what do you mean by the best? For an example, and I own this motorbike, goes really fast, you know, it's the best, you know, it does this, it's the best, it does, well, what makes it the best? Like, that motorbike is the same as that motorbike. It has two wheels, it has handlebars, and there's a throttle. It's the same, right? What makes it the best? Well, it's the best for you because when you're on it, it makes you feel a certain way, or it performs a certain way because it's built to perform a certain way. Okay, so best is relative to the context of where it's being used, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't like the word, you know, best or expert or perfect. And to support that, a gemologist. You know why a gemologist has a job? Like, they're the ones that separate, like, you know, this is a high value gem, you know, this is a stone that's worth a, you know, X amount of dollars, or this is a diamond that's worth X amount of dollars. The reason that they have a job and their profession is highly paid is because, for an example, if they have two diamonds and they're trying to figure out what the value is of each one. Well, the reality is the one that's got the highest value is the one that is not perfect. So the one that is perfect is most likely a fake, right? Mm-hmm. So in other words, perfection doesn't exist. If it does, it's not real. So we want to achieve the highest level, as close to perfection as we can, but expect that the expectation is real when we're like, okay, what is perfect? And will I settle for anything less than perfect? We should strive for perfection, but it's okay to accept that it's not quite perfect. And why I think that's important is because from a mental state, it's like, hey man, put your best foot forward. Always try to do the best that you possibly can, but know that your best today might be very different than your best tomorrow. And that's okay. Don't beat yourself up because it's not perfect. Perfect doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great mental skill that you just highlighted there, is to remember that, every person has a different perspective of what is best, what is perfect. It's good to strive for the perfection, like you said, but understand that it may not always be there. And something that I'm sure you tell your clients often, and I know that I tell my clients often, is today may not be, your optimal day. You may not come into the gym today, for example, and be feeling 100%, but you still came into the gym today. You still showed up, you're still here, you're putting in the work, you're still in control of what you do now with this next hour, even though what led up to this hour wasn't great. So today may not be a perfect day, but that's okay, because no day is going to be a perfect day.
That's right.
It's just all about showing up, putting in the work, trusting in the process, and understanding that life is like this. It's not going to be like this for anybody, no matter how it looks, especially on social media and other things where we only see the highlights.
Yes.
We only see the positives. We don't see the downsides. We don't see the negatives. Everyone's life is like this, and if anybody tells you their life is always on the up and up, they're lying.
Yes.
Because nobody has that perfect life.
That's right.
So I like that concept that you just put forward.
And when we set goals for ourselves, right? The way I look at it, and I've used this example in the past, if we're at the bottom of the stairs, right? And this is our aim, right? Our mission, our intent, we see it, but we're here. And our goal is the next landing, right? Our goal is to be here. Well, the reality of the process and going through each step is there's no easy button. There's no easy button where we're going to hit the elevator and it's going to take us up to the penthouse. If we want to go to the penthouse because that's where the most optimal performance is. That's where all the best food is. That's where all the best drinks. That's where we want to be. Well, there's only one way to get there, and we got to take one step at a time. And along that journey, along the process, there's going to be the occasional stumble. There's going to be the occasional slip. Maybe you missed that step and you had a little slip, and you're down, one or maybe two steps. Well, that doesn't mean you stop. That doesn't mean, I guess it's maybe that was a goal that was unachievable. No, man. No, that means that you dust yourself off, you take a deep breath, and you go, okay, what can I do differently next time when I need to negotiate that next step to get a little bit closer to my goal, right? So I use the analogy of taking the stairs. There's no easy button, there's no elevator, there's no escalator. We got to walk those steps. And along the process, yes, man, there are things that are going to go sideways for sure. And if they don't, to me, that would be more concerning. Like, that was really, really easy. Well, based on my experience, anything that's worth having comes at a cost, and it's not easy.
Mm-hmm. And if you are standing at the bottom of the staircase and looking up to that landing that's 10 stairs away, there's not a chance you're able to jump from floor to landing.
Yes.
You just won't make it, right? So you have to take the steps.
Take the steps.
You have to, no matter how many it takes.
And embrace whatever may come along the way. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
I think that was good, Randy.
Yeah, that's good. Awesome. All right, guys. As always, thanks for tuning in. Any questions, leave them in the comments box, and Sam and I will keep this going. And we do appreciate your feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. Keep it coming, and we'll address them.